What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to this pay-per-view review recap edition of the Smark at Moment Smack Talk podcast. Here, where we're going to be talking about WrestleDream 2025. Obviously, we did the preview edition prior to the pay-per-view, and that pay-per-view is over. It's about just less than a day over that we're recording this. Obviously, not the immediate post-show that you're used to because of certain factors. Obviously, Tony being away in Brazil means we can't do it live, but we thought we'd bring you our thoughts and feelings about this show itself. So I'm your host for this edition, Callum Wiggins, and joining me is Robert DeFelice.
Hey Callum, how are you feeling after that WrestleDream event?
I mean, I'm feeling pretty good because I fell asleep halfway through and then just watched the rest of it in the morning.
Wow,
So
that's amazing. I wonder what that's like. Listen, I'm full team afternoon pay-per-view for AEW at this point. Last night was a painful reminder of how sometimes it doesn't hit as strongly because it's so late and you're just exhausted.
yeah, I say it's the typical AEW long show, but as long shows go, they're a pretty good show still. But we'll get to all the little details about the matches, the news coming out of the show, anything along those lines. We want to hear your thoughts as well. If you want to drop them in the comments below, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't done already. If you're listening for any other mediums, of course, you can talk to us over through Discord or just hopping onto the YouTube comments, leaving your thoughts, and then just going back to resuming listening through your podcast platform of choice. But I'll get to the rest of the plugs towards the end of this episode, so we can just dive straight in. So, outside of, as we always would talk about the length of these shows, what are your overarching thoughts of WrestleDream?
I think, especially because Tony's not here on this edition, I'm going to lead more towards the thumbs in the middle, but kind of meh side than you probably will. And I'll have more specifics to say about the actual main event. But overall, I feel like this was the first one that sticks out in my mind of like, wow, okay, AEW needed to put on a pay-per-view and it was just not as exciting. It was a little more dull than what I would expect from the Tony Khan brand.
Yeah, I think that I can understand that perspective. I think there were some things on the show that dragged a little bit, and we'll get into those when we go down the match by match card. But I think overall, the very good matches were strong. I thought this was, if I was to take anything away from it, I think that it was a good night for tag team wrestling. I think that the tag team matches were the real highlight of the entire show. I think that there were several really good to great matches on this show. There are a few ones, I'd say, that weren't as spectacular as the others, but overall, I'd say it leans definitely more towards the thumbs up. I thought the crowd was really good throughout, well, for the majority of the show. So, yeah, I think that it's not going to be my pay-per-view of the year, but it's going to be, a positive. It definitely won't be on a negative side of things for me.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you as far as tag team wrestling is concerned. I I'll bury the lead a little bit and say that I think if the main event had not been a little rushed at the end, I might be a little more positive on the show.
Yeah, we'll definitely get onto that because that's one of the main talking points. I think when we get onto it was the main event and the finish of that match. But we'll dive straight into the very beginning, which was the tailgate brawl. The four matches that took place on the show, or at least technically 3.5 matches, as one of them, the other half of the match took place on the pay per view itself. But started off with the Death Riders of Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Pac, and Wheeler Yuta defeating Roderick Strong and the Conglomeration. And I guess we have to start with the most important question, which is, what do you think of the Conglomeration's new entrance theme?
I like that it's so sitcom-y. I like it. It's it's very funny, even though like my heart breaks because as an Undisputed Era stan, they're just sort of lumped into the conglomeration. I just like that this is such a fun faction. It's such a fun concept.
Yeah, I felt it was a little. I mean, I like the overall concept about the sitcom-y Friends style entrance, but it's more of a case of, oh, I feel bad that like Hologram and Harley Cameron aren't in it. Like, obviously Hologram's injured right now, but Harley Cameron's, surely she's at least Conglomeration adjacent. She's more wanted. She's probably more liked or likes the Conglomeration more than Roderick Strong, who is in the entrance video. So
Well, I think the thing with Harley Cameron is they never know where they want to put her. Like she's just so all over the place and can be with anybody that I guess she's conglomerating too much to even be considered a member of just the conglomeration.
match itself was pretty fun. I'd say nothing ultra spectacular, but you put 8 guys out there. AEW is very much like akin to these big 6-man, 8-man, or 8-woman tag team matches, and this is very much in the same formula style of it. All the guys just doing some cool moves before you eventually get the Death Rider scoring the victory. I'll say I think that I don't really know much more to add to it. I can't really think of any like super standout spots or performances in it. I think it's obviously great to see Pac back doing his thing, and I think they are seriously doing a lot with Claudio, but there was a lot more with Claudio at the end during the main event as well. But I thought good match, good opener to help get the crowd warmed up with some of the more popular acts on the show.
Yeah, I really like the idea of Wheeler and Danny together. I want them to be more of a team. I'm sad that Pac already dropped his new gear idea of like the long tights and the shoulder straps. I thought it would be cool for him to switch it up a little bit, but he looks tremendous. And yeah, Claudio is the man right now.
So we went from that to Eddie Kingston Hook defeated the Frat House's Cole Karter and Griff Garrison. So this is one of two instances on the show where we went into the show prior to this with the TBD announcement, which we'll get to with the Mercedes thing as well, where it was like, okay, it's TBD, but it's just some random person from the roster already being on it, which it's disappointing in a way. In a way, it's like, okay, I get it, but why don't you just announce who the opponent is going to be if it's going to be Cole Karter and Griff Garrison? Because you just set yourself up for, it's one of those things like, yeah, they explicitly didn't tell you that it was going to be someone from outside of things, like they're bringing in a CMLL team or a New Japan team or bringing up someone else that's like is trying to break through that's a bit more exciting, or in the independent circuit it's just going to be two jobbers that Kingston and Hook are easily going to beat. But like, you should just announce it because it does allow people's minds to wander.
Yeah, I think especially with particularly the tailgate brawls, you got to look at them as just like an hour-long episode of Collision
Mm.
because it's essentially what it was, and it's like announcing Hook and Eddie Kingston will be in action on Collision. Who do we got? Well, the frat house is here. I think it's funny that this is one of two instances where there were TVD situations and both involved frat house. Like frat house stayed busy last night. They're a good team, but yeah, Hook and Kingston get the win. Not the strongest comeback for Eddie Kingston so far.
No, he has just been like just doing middle of the road stuff with essentially the story of him coming back is that he's mentoring Hook and they've joined forces. But yeah, so it's not exactly him just being pushed to the moon right now. But I think it's fine to a degree because he's clearly still not 100% back to what he was before, prior to the injury. He's still being eased back into things, and there are other people that are more ready to be towards the top of the card. So I understand that they haven't just thrown him straight into like a big feud just yet, but we'll see if the tag team has more legs to it and they get thrown more into this growing AEW tag team picture. That could be a way to circumnavigate that. Moving on to the first, well, I guess the next tag team match, because there were multiple tag team matches all along the tailgate brawl. Harley Cameron and Willow Nightingale defeated the top gods of Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. First of all, big fan of the Harley Cameron Poison Ivy, not Harley Cameron, Harley Quinn Poison Ivy cosplay of Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford.
Yeah,
So,
they got the memo about Full Gear being sponsored by DC a little early,
mm,
but they look fantastic. And as always, big pop for Willow Nightingale.
Yes, because and Willow Nightingale and Holly Cameron having the matching pink and blue gear as well. So, and this is, I think it's important that they got this victory because it does now lend a lot of weight to the idea that it's going to be Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron in this tag team tournament, because it's not going to be
I'm
Chris
not
Statlander.
crazy about that, but I guess Statlander, they're just doing so much more with her.
Yeah, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But I think it makes sense because what I realistically see, like, the match itself was all right. I think that it wasn't as a super spectacular, but Willow Nightingale getting good pop, like throwing people around. I like the exchanges between her and Megan Bayne. I think Penelope Ford has shown a lot more to me, because I wouldn't say I was down on Penelope Ford, but I didn't think that she was anything special. She was more just like a stunt person that would do flips, and rather than do actual work. And I think that the pairing with Bayne has revitalized her a lot, and I think she was doing some really cool stuff in this match as well. And but I think that what I personally envision from this is that they're going to be paired with each other in the first round of the tag tournament again for the rematch, and that's when Top God's going to beat them.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I will say, I think I've also discovered who will be winning this tournament.
I think we all know who's going to win this tournament, so it does. But I think that we'll get to that when we get to it. But it's like, but
and that's also unfortunate.
no, I don't think that's unfortunate, and I'll explain when we get to that aspect of it. But I think Mega Man and Penelope Ford are definitely a team that's in the upper echelon of teams that could win this tournament. I don't think they will, because, as I say, we'll get to who we think are now the hot favourites to win. But they're definitely in the contention for it, because they've been a well-established act for a while. They definitely like to protect Megan Bayne. Penelope's a good option because she's always there to take the fall if necessary. But and she took the fall in this match from Willow Nightingale hitting the Doctor Bomb. And that's a good, decent enough match, and just setting the groundwork for the tag tournament, which will be starting up on Dynamite. So see how that see who gets paired up with who, because they haven't announced any of the brackets yet, as far as I'm
They're
aware.
gonna announce the brackets on Wednesday night, and
Okay.
I'm interested in who will be in the tournament. And I will say again, the reason I said the presumed winners is unfortunate is because I think it's sad that, like, you look at it and you go, up, they just gave away the goose. Like, now you kind of feel like you know where this is going, as opposed to
But
feeling like, hey, maybe a team like TJ would have a shot or
well,
something.
well, in a way, because we get to a bit like that. Well, because they've set it up so heavily that it seems so likely that the team we think is going to win is going to win. If they don't win, then it's a shocking surprise.
It will be a great surprise.
Yeah. But then we move on to what I thought was one of the best parts of the show, which was FTR and JetSpeed start. And I look at the clock and it's like, okay, they're starting this match and there's like 5 minutes left of Tailgate Brawl. Like, there's no way they're doing a 5 minute match. That would be bad for either of those teams. They'd just win in a couple of minutes. So what happens is that they start the match and they're just going at a million miles an hour, like FTR beating up on at ringside, and then it cuts away because the actual pay per view is going to start. And so the show starts with them doing like the trading punches in the middle of the ring as pyro's going off behind, and like Excalibur's doing the announcement, and they're fighting all over the place. The crowd's going crazy, chanting AEW as all this stuff is happening. And I thought it was a really creative way to start the pay per view, to have action immediately going on the first thing, and as a means of, if people were on the fence about buying it and then they saw the start of this match and they were enjoying it, and then it says, "Oh, we're gonna have to move over to the pay per view," I'm sure it may have convinced. It wouldn't be like thousands of people, but it might have convinced, a dozen or so people that maybe weren't buying the pay per view to maybe purchase it instead. But
Yeah,
I thought it was an interesting way of starting the show.
I think it was really cool. I like the WCW Nitro vibes of, like, pyro's just going off because, hey, we gotta go with the pyro, and I was a big fan of how they started off the show with that. And I think what a better way to start off pay-per-view than with hot action like this.
Yeah, I thought this was an excellent tag team match. It was a theme of two matches on the show in particular, which was a veteran, well-established tag team like giving as much as they possibly could to a younger upstart tag team, or should I say upstart? Obviously, with the other team, it was more of a case of coming back after being away for a long time, but a tag team that's on the rise and needed to have a bit of help. Obviously, in this one, you do have FTR get the victory over JetSpeed thanks to Stokely Hathaway just getting involved towards the end and really cheating JetSpeed out of the potential victory. And yeah, I think this is going to develop. I don't think this is the end of their matches or rivalry. I think JetSpeed is still very much on the rise, and I think that it's just, a really good match between two really good tag teams, just to get the crowd excited straight away. Yes, does it necessarily need to be on the actual pay-per-view card? Potentially not, but I think it was nice to have that unique style opening that felt chaotic, it felt like rushed, it felt rushed in a good way, and it felt a bit oh god, anything could happen type vibe, which I think
I
we need to see more of in wrestling generally, but also in AEW as well.
agree. I like this a lot. I think I would have went with a different finish, but I like the match a lot, and I like the way that they started the show.
I think it's fine as long as JetSpeed get a victory over them, because I think it's like they felt like they were really screwed out of this one. So I think that they need to be FTR in some fashion down the road for this to make sense for me. Like, it can't just be FTR just win and then they just move on. So we'll see how it progresses. But then we moved on to our the actual opener of the show, technically, which was Jamie Hayter defeating Thekla. So this is Tekla's first singles defeat. Tony Khan announced prior to the show that like everyone would be banned from ringside, so there's going to be no Triangle Bandits, no Queen Aminata or anybody of that ilk supporting Jamie. And yeah, this was very, very physical. And like lots of like dives to the outside, big lariats, like massive like ushigoroshis and backbreakers, and I really, really love the unique kind of octopus spot that Thekla put Hayter in at one point in this match towards the end. And I like the finish as well because Jamie Hayter needs to be protected. I know Tekla's done really well since coming in. They have had her be undefeated for a while, but I thought Thekla was going to win because I thought that she's the more natural championship challenger to Chris Statlander, but they're obviously not going in that direction just yet. So having Jamie Hayter get a victory, because she should still be positioned as like a big star for their women's division, I think that was like, it was a good way of helping elevate her a little bit more after she's had a bit of a stop-start comeback from her injury a little while ago.
Yeah. I like that. I like the match a lot. I like how they delivered, and it made me want to see more grudge matches featuring women on pay-per-views. I think that is something wrestling lacks across both promotions, and we need to normalize, hey, just like any men and any combination of men can have a random match take up a spot on a main pay-per-view card, women should be able to do that as well. And both of these women delivered. This could have been a championship match of any kind, but it sets Jamie Hayter on the right path. And at some point, she's gonna get that shot at the title in a one-on-one.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think so yeah, we're still no clearer on the teams for Blood and Guts, which is obviously still a bit a disappointment. But at least when we saw the match ending, we saw the top Triangle Madness all out there, so we know they're all going to be
Like we
involved
know
in
Queen
some.
Aminata's in it. We know Triangle of Madness is in it, and then it'll be who do you want to get to fill out those sides?
Yeah, and also like how much does the tag team tournament, uh, like what's the influence of that on this as well? So we'll have to wait and see. But for an opener, it was a strong way of starting. And then we moved on to one of the better matches on the entire show, which was Jurassic Express versus the Young Bucks for the $500,000 cash prize. They did a little vignette or like the Young Bucks entrance where they showed like them being only having like $32 in their bank account because of all the expenses, and so being about $490,000 in debt, so they had to win this to pay off their debts. But they ended up not winning because the Jurassic Express managed to get the victory. I thought that the match, it was an interesting match because I thought it was still very, very good. Like, these two teams worked really well together. It was a great showcase for Jurassic Express and Young Bucks. So just one of the best teams in the world and best teams of all time. Put them over as strong as they possibly could. Like, had Jack Perry kick out of the BTE trigger and all this stuff as well. So like, they put them over as strong as they possibly could. And I think Jurassic Express showed why, and this might be like hindsight 2020, they should never have, maybe not never have split up, but they should never have turned heel, either of them. They just work too well as baby faces.
See, I think
And
Perry was onto something, but it's very clear that this is where he should be.
yeah, I think that like this kind of painted the Ultimate picture to be that like he just was never going to work as a top heel. And to be fair, I don't think he can ever really work as a top babyface either. I think that he's going to always be at a sort of ceiling where like top mid card guy will be his peak now. But him being part of a tag team with Luchasaurus, where he's like the babyface in peril, and Luchasaurus is the hot tag guy that cleaned house with his like mixture of like great power and athleticism with like his like backflips and throws and all of that stuff. I think that they just complement each other so well, and it was crystallized in this particular match because they're back, and it just feels right that they're back together doing it. But the match itself was pretty long, went over 20 minutes, and I think that it's one of those instances where the match had a lot of close near falls where you thought it was going to be towards the end, and it always felt like, oh, that was the peak of the match, and then it just kept going on. But then there was another peak, and then there was another peak. The crowd never really got lost anywhere along the way. I think they were just really excited about it. But I think it's the right result, obviously, to have Jurassic Express win, but maybe it could have been a bit more concise. I don't think it necessarily needs to go as long as it did, but it was still a very fun match.
Yeah, I think if you're ever going to be egregious and take up time, these are the men who can do it because the match was great. If you like PWG, like if you miss PWG Young Bucks, this was PWG Young Bucks. Would that be fair to say?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that they went out of their way with like loads of big spots and moments in this one. It was very much like, let's see how much we can do to each other in like a 20-minute time limit or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun still, but I thought it could have been shave a few minutes off of it, and then we'll see. But
I think when you get into like the way the main event went down, the need to shave some minutes off of a lot of things starts to take shape. But for what it was, I thought this match was fantastic, and it was one of my favorite parts of the whole show.
well, they certainly could have potentially shaved some time off in the post match because they had Jurassic Express kind of offering a handshake to the Young Bucks, who were a bit hesitant to accept. But then members of Don Callis' family came out to take out Jurassic Express, and the Young Bucks just started walking away. Kenny Omega comes out, he just walks past the Young Bucks, he helps save Jurassic Express from the beatdown, then you get to hear Kenny Omega's entrance theme again afterwards, and then you get to hear Jurassic Express theme. It just felt, okay, this post-match angle's gone on for about 5 minutes. Well, we don't really need, it could have just been like other guys come out, then Kenny comes out, get it over and done with in like 2-3 minutes, but it just felt like they lingered on it for longer than they needed to.
Well, they wanted to like they're teasing that the Bucks are gonna go babyface soon.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. But Omega was like, "Hey, do the right thing, guys." You know, Jurassic Express tried to get them to shake their hands. It seems like they wanted to accomplish a lot of things, and I think they wanted to give people Kenny Omega since we were going to get Kenny Omega either versus Andrade or in a tag match of some kind, and we couldn't do that for several things out of their control.
Yeah. So yeah, it was good to have Kenny on the show, but it just feels like it was just adding a lot of unnecessary bulk to the start of the show. And then we moved into the Tornado Trios match for a shot to become the number one contender for the AEW World Trios Championship. And we
Now,
had
was
the
that
Hurt.
announced beforehand, or was that just like sprung up on the thing?
I think I didn't know of it the day beforehand.
Yeah, I
We
didn't
did.
know of it until the team that won, and they said on Wednesday they'll be getting a shot at the trios title.
They definitely said it before the match took place. I know that Excalibur said that before the match took place that it was for a number contendership, but I don't know how much sooner it was aware of, or it was probably announced maybe on either the actual 0 hour that was taking place at the same time as the tailgate brawl. But one way or the other, that was what was at stake in this match, and it was the Hurt Syndicate who defeated the Demand in the trios match. So they kind of did the usual stuff between these two. They've been quite this physical gang war style feud between the two of them. They did a spot early on with Tomohiro taking out both Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley through tables. And so it left a 3-on-1 where they were just beating the hell out of MVP, and MVP was just fighting to survive. Eventually, Shelton Benjamin gets back in, and Lashley helps out as well. They turn the tide in their favour. I thought that the spot of the match for me was, well, first Shelton Benjamin German suplexing Ricochet over the top rope onto everybody, and then Shelton Benjamin doing that giant leap to the outside as well, showing his just timeless athleticism. He's 50 years old. He's 50 years old doing that. Crazy.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
He's 50 years old.
He's 50
All right,
years
Shelton
old.
Benjamin, for me in my brain, is permanently 32, but I guess I'm 32. He can't be, but Jesus.
Which is crazy because that team between the three of them, their average age is 50. They have a combined age of 150 years old.
That's. There's a lot of positives to say about that. There's also a lot of frustrating negatives as to not to be ageist, but telling me we can't find younger roster members. But it's also do you need them when Benjamin's still moving like he's 27? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that the match itself was the physical thing you expected. I don't think it was anything that went beyond what they've done in previous matches. But I understand, especially when we get to what happened in the world title match later on, it makes sense to have the Hurt Syndicate get the victory.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a very good chance we'll see the titles change hands on Wednesday.
I do believe we will see the titles change hands.
And that's good for them because it allows those titles to beat them to have their own little world with those titles, and they can defend it against whoever. They can be in and out of things because I think that it's not required by the Ops in the direction they're now heading. So I think the Hurt Syndicate can just easily get the titles and still feud with the Demand over them, LFI, anybody else who's around, and they can just have their own little world with the trios titles for a little bit. And
I do just want to confirm Shelton Benjamin is 50 years old. Bobby Lashley will be 50 next year, and MVP is 51. That's incredible. And they're still moving very well considering.
Actually, MVP turns 52 in over a week's time.
He turns 52 in maybe a week, a little more than a week.
Yeah. So
very impressive.
So, actually, speaking of that, something that I didn't mention earlier was during the Hayter and Thekla match, they cut a lot to Charlie Fez at ringside, the wife of Lou Fez, who is alive and in her 80s, and that set Blue Sky ablaze because they were like, "Hang on, let's do the maths here for a second, because how is she alive?"
Wife, there is a 27-year age gap, but I do believe she was in her late 20s, early 30s when they got married.
Yeah, he was in his 50s when they got married. So those sort of things, they're a bit. It's not like it wasn't like cradle robbing or anything like that. And as either men or women get older, then those bigger age gaps don't become as much of a issue. So that's not the question. It's just crazy to think that Lou Fez, he debuted in pro wrestling in, I believe, 1930 something. So nearly 100 years ago.
And his last wife is still. It was interesting to see. I like the amount of Lou Fez talk we've got this weekend.
Yeah.
Because one, they're in St. Louis, but mostly because Tony Khan said he was friends on AIM, which is AOL Instant Messenger, with Lou Fez, which is the funniest thing and the most
Well,
Tony Khan thing I could have ever heard.
Well, Lufez did a lot of stuff with like the internet, the early internet age. Like he was on like Wrestling Observer, like radio a lot of the time, a few times as well. Like he was,
Shout out
you know,
to him for not being, stuck in the mud.
yeah. So that was cool. And also during that match, don't you Hayter came out with an Antonio Inoki scarf on as well. So again, just paying tribute to both those names in that match. Then we moved on back to our regularly scheduled programming of Carl Fletcher successfully defending the AEW TNT Championship against Mark Briscoe. And I mean, what can you kind of say? Like these two just are incapable of having bad matches, and they have great matches with each other a lot as well. This was no exception to that. With like just going, hell for leather with all the stuff that they would typically do. It's like Fletcher is just having one of the best runs in ring this entire year, and Briscoe was always on step with him. He's been having like on a crest of a wave after the beating MJF in their recent feud. So we came into this, and I think the closing sequence was great because they had Briscoe hit the Dragula on Fletcher, and Fletcher just got one finger on the rope to kick out, but then they had him hit a low blow and then a brainbuster to Briscoe, and everyone just thought, oh god, he's just going to cheat to win. And then Briscoe kicked out, and the crowd was just going electric at that point. Like Fletcher looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Don Callis getting up from the announce table, like really scared at that point. But I like the fact that they just ended it with Fletcher just hitting more moves, eventually hitting the top rope brainbuster, and just getting the pinfall. Eventually, it was like, it was a nice like oh my god moment. But Fletcher was just too much in control at that point and just hit the moves that he needed to hit to finally get the victory. So yeah, it was a convincing win. Fletcher gets the victory. Briscoe got a nice little ovation on the way out as well. But I thought this was just an excellent match between these two.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the better singles match on the show. I think I got suckered in when he kicked out of the brainbuster. I thought, okay, cool, they're actually gonna go with Mark Briscoe just for the feel good moment that I had predicted on our podcast. But ultimately, I also like that Kyle Fletcher is just winning on his own. There's, especially with the Callis family, there's a lot of interference and stuff, and I like that AEW is a place where that shouldn't happen too much. And I think with the Death Rider and Don Callis family running concurrent, there's a lot of that. So it felt good to not see it here. But yeah, Kyle Fletcher might be the runner up, if not the winner, of this year's Continental Classic.
He's definitely going to be. He's definitely a contender for it, but he's done. I think they're both potentially contenders for it as well. I think Briscoe could definitely be elevated to that point as well. But I just thought it was a great match, and they're clearly protecting Fletcher. He will be in the main event picture next year, if not already, like winning the championship at some point next year in the next 2 years. But this was, another great performance between two guys that just consistently deliver on pay-per-view.
I think Mark Briscoe should maybe sit this one out. I want to see some new people in the C2 because there's only so many spots. And I think like Bandito's got it locked this year.
Bandito's definitely. Well, it depends. Like, are they gonna if they're still tag champions at that point? Then are they gonna still just be doing that and not be part of the C2 instead? Like, there's lots of people like that. As like there, it's a limited number of names, but I think that if you're obviously going to have a Carter in it because he's holding the title, Bandito definitely could be in it. Brody King could be in it. You've got Orange Cassidy. You've got like loads and loads of people that would be worthy of a spot, especially if you can get like Andrade free from his current legal issues as well. He could definitely have a place in it as well. I say it is very difficult when you've historically only had 12 spots, but they might expand it. Who knows? They might decide that they're going to expand it out this year because of that.
That's true. You could do that.
It depends because obviously there's only so much time between. They typically would end the Continental Classic at World's End, so there's only so much space to be. But I think it would, based on the year that he's had, I think it would be wrong to not have Mark Briscoe being in the C2. I think that he's told his story has been a lot of attached to C2 because of how in the first Continental Classic he was only got his first win right at the very end, and the next year he came back a little bit stronger. I think this is the year that you use it to. I would be confident in saying that I think Mark Briscoe is not only going to be in the C2, but he'll be one of the block finalists.
Wow, that's some high praise because I see it being Kyle Fletcher and I don't know who the babyface will be, but maybe Bandito. Like I don't know if they'll be tag champions, but I can see the Fletcher and Bandito and Orange Cassidy wrestling that much might be intriguing. There's a lot of options you can go to, and I think I'm getting very excited for the idea of the C2.
So move on to the Women's Championship match. Chris Statlander defeated Tina Stony Storm to retain the Women's Championship. This was the first kind of lull period of the show. Like the crowd had been pretty amped up all the times, and maybe this is a time where they were just a bit tired out. I think it took them a while to get into this match because they told a bit more of a technical wrestling style early on. Like the babyface face thing. It's kind of less physical, over dramatic, which I think was kind of a bit too juxtaposed to what they've been doing in the build up. Because in the build up, what they've been doing is let's go to the ring and beat the shit out of each other, even though we respect each other. And then they start with technical wrestling. And I think, well, surely if you wanted to keep the theme of what you've been building to, you just get in the ring and you just start punching each other immediately, like you've been doing in the lead up to it. But they went a more classic wrestling route with more of a there was no real heel in this match. It was just Toni Storm took a little bit of advantage early on, and then Chris Statlander came back later on. They had several near falls with the Storm hitting the Storm Zero, putting Toni Storm into a variety of submission holds until eventually Statlander hit two Saturday Night Fevers close to in proximity to each other and pinned Toni Storm clean. So put over strong. She is definitively the champion. Like she defeated the former champion 1-on-1. So we can move past Toni Storm in the world title picture for now. Statlander's definitely where she is, and I thought it was good, but I was hoping for better.
Yeah, I think that's a theme for some of the rest of the matches on this show. I like the fact that we're moving on from Toni Storm. I like the fact that Stat is solidified as champion. I am interested to see where she goes with the Death Riders because there's still so much meat on that bone. She, I believe, is, if you compare the Death Riders to NWO, she had her like DDP moment where she teased during the group and then attacked him. And I think there's big time matches with Marina in her future. I think there's big time matches with, eventually Willow could beat her. I think, well, let me be clear. I think a lot of people could have big matches with her, but I also think she's running into a freight train in the month of November. So we'll see if she gets out of Full Gear alive.
Yeah, that's the big thing to come out of this one. Let's move on to the next match because it very much bleeds into both things, both Storm and Statlander's future, which was Mercedes Moné had issued an open challenge after the CMLL title defense that took place on Friday, where she retained her championship over Persephone. She then issued a challenge saying any champion to come face me in an open challenge match, put your title on the line, I'll put my TBS title on the line, and if I win, I become 11 belts Moné. I beat Ultimo Dragon's record. Yeah, then that was the goal of this one. Again, it's one of those situations, probably even more egregious than the Kingston Hook match from earlier, because at least that's on your TV show, that tailgate brawl. This one has been moved on to a pay-per-view, so when you say it could be any champion, and we know what AEW's relationship is with other promotions like Stardom and New Japan and CMLL, and just
And the
even like
challenge was made in a CMLL ring.
exactly, and you have like listen, when she said that, the immediate thoughts went to, in my mind, it went to three names, which was Shiori, who just won the IWGP Women's Championship and has obviously done stuff in AEW recently, went to Athena because of the Ring of Honor World Championship, and he went to like a Stardom name, like not anyone particular. It wouldn't have been Saya Kamitani because there's no way she would end up losing either of her titles unless they decided they would just have her drop the New Japan Strong Women's Championship as opposed to the Stardom Championship. So, but I doubt she was going to be there anyway. But those are, again, you think of those big names, and then it ends up being Mina Shirakawa, who is technically a champion, even though her title was technically the interim Ring of Honor Women's Television Championship.
That's where this gets crazy. So Mercedes Moné, just so we're clear, is the new interim Ring of Honor Women's TV champion.
Yep. Which means that technically Red Velvet is the actual Women's World Television Champion. But
which means that at some point Mercedes has to face Red Velvet, hopefully at least on Ring of Honor programming.
So it could be on the next pay-per-view. Well, it depends on when Red Velvet is available, but I imagine that they'll just put Mercedes in a match on the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view if Velvet is available to compete. And, that'll be fun. She'll just win that and become the official champion.
It's bizarre to me that she hasn't won a world title yet. Like
she's CMLL Women's World Champion.
Okay, that's fair. But like she's got a lot of belts.
Yeah.
But she's not, and she's being treated like the star of the division, but she's also not wrestling for the top prizes. That's why I thought Athena was going to be the one here, because at least if you're Ring of Honor Women's World Champion, you got something there.
Well, Mercedes, I would say, like, because we haven't heard a lot of the promotions that she is currently a champion of, she is those promotions' top champion. She is currently the CMLL Women's World Champion. She is like the longest reigning TBS champion of all time. So it is like she's the Rev Pro Women's World Champion. So she does hold prestigious belts, although a lot of her titles are from like smaller or lesser known promotions. But that for them, it's a really good thing because oh my god, our champion is Mercedes Moné. That's a big deal. So, and she holds these 11 belts now. She's been doing the big belt collector gimmick. But I guess the match itself for Mina Shirakawa was much for muchness. I don't think it was anything particularly special. It was fine. I think they did a good job towards the end of having Mina get her hand on the rope after the statement maker or the Moné maker to feel like, oh god, there's going to be that's false finish. Oh my god, they're actually going to have Mina Shirakawa win the title. And then they went towards it. Literally went like a minute or so later and then Mina Shirakawa got caught in a roll up. Mercedes got her foot on the rope and scored the pinfall. So she takes Mina's championship away, or her interim championship at the very least away. And I say it was an okay match. I don't think it was anything special. It definitely wasn't the level of some of Mercedes' matches this year, but it was fine. But I guess the bigger story is what happened before the match and what happened after the match. Because before the match, it was Statlander was still celebrating her victory over Toni Storm. So Mercedes comes out and interrupts her, tells her to get out of the ring so she can have her big title match. And then after the match was over and she's celebrating, Statlander comes out and takes out Mercedes Moné, throws her away, and so celebrates with her title still. And then later on in the show, Mercedes Moné challenges Chris Statlander for a championship match at Full Gear.
I'm torn here because I just want them to keep it on Stat, but I'm also like, is the bit gonna be that Mercedes can't win the big one even though she's won all these other belts?
Well, the story they're telling is that obviously besides just Mercedes winning all of those championships, is the fact that she is 2-0 against Statlander as well. She's defending the TBS championship twice against her. So the idea being that she's got Statlander's number and should be able to defeat her for the world championship. So I think it's good in the sense that it is unpredictable because you just don't expect Statlander to lose the title this early, but they have built Mercedes up so much, so there is a real sense of jeopardy over, oh, are they going to pull the trigger and make Mercedes the world champion, give her another championship, and then Stat has to build herself back up again? Or they're going to have Stat beat Mercedes, and as you say, tell the story that Mercedes just can't win the big one, and she's just, she'll win all of these other ones, but the AEW World Championship is going to continue to elude her, and maybe that will set her on a path of. I think that this could be an interesting way of looking at it, and because my big kind of not issue, but my big question about Mercedes holding 11 championships, that means she has to lose 11 championships at some point. So, so like, how's that necessarily going to work? But I feel like there could be a story they tell where Mercedes just looks at all the titles around her and then she says, oh, I need to be the AEW Women's World Champion. And if I'm holding all these titles or defending all these titles and concentrate on that, I'm not focusing on the big prize. So she starts slowly vacating the titles to allow her to have that sole focus on the world title before she eventually wins it.
Yeah, I think as I said it, like that is the best way to do it, where she gets so wrapped up in I'm too concerned with all these other belts. I'm just either she loses it and goes on a spiral until she can become the most important champion in wrestling, because then it becomes a quality over quantity thing. No disrespect to the other, 11 championships, but the way you tell it is like, I don't want to be 11 champions anymore. I want to be the one.
Yeah. I think you continue the story for a while because I think that it's just the whole story is built around her ego and the fact that she thinks that she's the greatest of all time, and that by holding all these titles that makes her the greatest of all time. But then you eventually, if you have her lose like top world title matches to the AW world title like 2 or 3 times, then that might start her like questioning herself and questioning what she needs to do to become the champion. So that's the route that I would take it for now. And it means that she maybe loses a couple of her titles in like CMLL and whatever. Maybe she keeps a couple of them, but she drops a few of the lesser well-known ones or the mid-card titles, and just carries on her way there. But yeah, it is interesting to just go straight into that match at Full Gear. It's a year on from I think their first match, or it may have been the rematch last year. So there's a symmetry with that as well. But it should be a fun match. Like their 2 matches they had last year were 2 of the best women's matches of that calendar year. So I have no doubt that they'll have the same chemistry with the World Championship on the line.
Yeah, and it'll be one of the best matches of the year, I'm sure, because Mercedes is another one. It's Mercedes and Io for best woman of the year in all of wrestling, and to me,
It's Tony Storm, I'd say, but like everyone else there, right to their own opinion on that front. But yeah, but speaking of Tony Storm, let's pick at that as well. So after, a backstage segment that took place after this, we had Tony Storm like backstage, leaning back against like some loading crates, like saying, "I've got nothing anymore." And then Mina turns up and says, "We've got each other." So they are undoubtedly going to be one of the teams that enters the women's tag team tournament. And as most people will probably feel, they are definitively the favourites to win those titles.
they're at least getting to the finals.
Yeah, I'd say so, definitely.
I still wouldn't. I'd give it to. I really want TJ to win. Like, they won't win anything, but like I want them to win selfishly because they were starting the tag teams scene for AEW. I'd I'd like to see a lot of women get a chance here, but I think Tony Storm is going to be the main star in this tournament to like give it even more eyes, and let's see where they go.
Yeah, I would be totally cool with the idea of them winning the titles because it sets up them like prestigious straight away by having like your greatest ever women's champion be one of the first tag champions as well, and they're super over, they're super popular. As much as like some people, and potentially certain people in this podcast included are a bit like tired of the Tony Storm shtick. Like, the fact of the matter is, the general consensus of AEW fans are not. So we can't speak for all AEW fans.
Oh no, and I understand that completely. I will always understand that this is a majority rules type of industry, and I know that's where the majority lies. I would just also like to see other women on the card get the chance to be champion.
No, that's that. I understand that as well, and I'd be totally fine with someone like a TJ or a Top Gods or Sky Blue and Julia Hart or someone else winning the titles. I don't think it necessarily has to be Mina and Tony. I think it still could be a good thing if it's Mina and Tony, though.
I think so as well. No matter what, I want them to treat these belts with the prestige that they deserve.
And then we move over into what I thought was my favourite match of the night, which was Brodito defending the AEW World Tag Team Championships against Kazuchika Okada and Konosuke Takeshita. I thought this was the best tag match on the show. I thought that they really worked well together. I think they interweaved in the Okada and Takeshita tension where they needed to do so. I thought they had their fun moments where Brodito were doing the Macarena with each other, and then get attacked from behind. Then Okada starts doing the Macarena, but flipping off the crowd at the same time. So they did some fun stuff. They had the moment towards the end where Okada goes for the Rainmaker, but Bandito ducks. He hits Takeshita instead. Takeshita's pretty much taken out at that point, and they told the whole story. The whole one of the biggest narratives throughout the story was the work that had been done on Bandito's shoulder, and they will continue to work on that. So to the point where Bandito couldn't hit the 21 plex as he typically would because he just couldn't get any strength into his left arm, and so Brody King was constantly saying, "Don't give up, keep fighting, you can do this," like just basically coaching in the entire match. And then towards the end, he gets Brody dives to the outside, takes out Takeshita, and then Bandito pins Okada after hitting the 21 plex with one arm. So that's a big moment for him. He beats. He's only the third person in AEW to pin Okada. So that's a big moment in and of itself. And yeah, I thought the match was just really well put together. I think all the guys worked like brilliantly together. We obviously know how good the chemistry between Bandito and Takeshita is based on their match for the Ring of Honor title a few months ago. So yeah, absolutely thought this was great.
I agree. And I think Brodito is the best surprise to ever come to the tag team division in AEW. I think Bandito might be the best luchador in the world. Nothing but positives here. There was the Rainmaker to Takeshita and Okada just like not even remotely shying away from the fact that he's
smiling at him. He's smiling at the fact that he's taking
out. I fucking hate you, fuck you. Like just up yours. But I don't know, man. I would have loved to have seen Okada and Takeshita have a frenemy run with tag titles, but Brodito is just too good. And they might be champions through the end of the year, but I just foresee some C2 fun for Bandito. And if they have to lose the titles for that, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, there is so many different routes they can take. They're both so good as singles guys as well that it's not out of the question that they drop the titles to a more established team. I think that there's a very good chance FTR become champions before the end of the year because they just are being pushed quite heavily. We still have, in theory, we have the return of Cope and Christian at some point, and they could potentially win the tag titles. We have JetSpeed coming up. Jurassic Express have just reunited. There are a lot of teams that are knocking on that door, waiting to be tag team champions and waiting for those opportunities. So it's not out of the question, but Brodito have been such a great surprise. They work so well together. Yeah, I think that it's just I wouldn't be upset with them holding the titles for a little while longer because they have really good matches with everyone they've faced so far and they work so well together. I still think that I agree with you that I think there's a good chance they lose beforehand. You either have Bandito in the C2, he's still Ring of Honor World Champion. I still think that he's going to drop it to Josh Alexander at the end of the year. But yeah, as I think there's a lot of routes to go. But I thought, yeah, it's like the match itself was great, and it served the bigger purpose, which I think is, even though it's the tag titles, and it was great to see Bandito get the pin on Okada, and he's going to have the match with Okada for the Unified Championship on Dynamite. Really, the key of this match was continuing to build the inevitable match between Takeshita and Okada 1-on-1 for whatever championships are up.
Depending on, listen, that first C2 was for like 3 championships. Depending on how they go here, could we see the C2 before the Unified Championship still, since it is? I think that's actually a lock, isn't it? That it's still like the legacy of the Continental Championship.
Yeah,
So
it should still be. I mean, I don't know whether say it's how they're going to play it, and I would assume that it's going to be just for the Unified Championship, but they could decide, oh no, it's only for the Continental Championship, and then they're going to split the Unified Championship, and it'll just be like it'll be back to being the International and the Continental Championship. But I don't think they'll go down that route, but they have proved me wrong when I thought those sort of things in the past. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, as I they'll definitely be involved in it in some form or fashion. I think it's still the Wrestle Kingdom main event. I think it will just be that's part of me. That's why part of me thinks that like someone like a Mark Briscoe or even like a Bandito, I think they might win the Unified Championship just so it frees Okada to just go after the IWGP World Championship, and that neither Okada nor Keshta is involved in the finals of the C2
it's possible.
because they
I would
cost each
also not be
other.
surprised if I saw the TNT title on the line here
Yeah,
for
I mean
that.
that could be. Yeah, if you get Fletcher involved, yeah, that's definitely a choice as well. So we could very much see a situation where, I mean, you can't really cost each other because there's no interference allowed in CT matches, but it's a case of maybe they're just getting each other's way or getting each other's heads throughout it, and like they just both have bad runs in the tournament and get taken out, and they decide to move them instead into the world title picture.
I do think Okada can get away with a form of interference where he can hit a button
Mm.
during a Takeshita match and just say I pressed the wrong button. I'm so sorry. Like it'll be interesting, and all 3 of those men, by the way, are Don Callis family members, so it adds a layer of jeopardy for Don to like one of my men needs to win this tournament to secure these titles.
So
Very very excited for the future of AEW is what I'm saying here.
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's definitely plenty of options for people to win those titles, and it's not just going to be. It just isn't going to just be tied to a card for all of time. I don't believe so. Let's move on to the semi-main event for the AEW World Championship, which was Hangman Page defeating Samoa Joe. Um, as physical match you'd expect it to be, Joe was just in his semi monster heel type role, throwing Page around the place, like being the dominant guy that he's always has been. Page just fighting from underneath, Joe like toying with him, knocking him down a little while, and Page just getting up, almost like intimidating Joe himself with the way that he was taking that punishment and firing straight back. Eventually, it took 3 buckshot lariats, one after the other, to fell Samoa Joe and get the pinfall and retain the championship. So before we get onto the post match stuff, the match itself I thought was what it needed to be. It made Page look strong against a guy that you can just build up and be like your top monster heel or your like one of the top guys in the promotion at any point in time. Joe has such a reputation about him and an aura about him that Page getting victory and standing toe to toe with him and withstanding all that Joe could throw at him and getting the victory, it just feels like it helps elevate Page a little bit further in this second title run.
I agree. And I think the most shocking thing to me was the way that Joe really played Lumbering Giant towards the end there, where like it took 3 buckshots to get him down. Because Joe, he's a big boy, but he's not usually presented in that way,
Mm.
where it's like, oh, he can't take he won't even go down for a bump. But like, it was strong and it was definitive. And I'll go on record and say I'm very surprised by the post match angle, and that this seems to be continuing. Well, it seems to be, it will be continuing.
Yeah. So that was the that's the big talking point, which was essentially the post match happens, and it's the ops come out to kind of commiserate with Joe, and Hangman Page shows him respect, and the crowd show him respect as well. And I guess everyone was kind of thinking about, well, what's the quote unquote plan of this? Like, this was seemingly in many people's eyes just to stop that feud. I think people were speculating that Jay White was coming back, and maybe he attacks Hangman, and they go on a feud because of White's record with Hangman Page. Or they were just gonna, take a bit of a pause here, and then we'd find out on Dynamite what the next step was going to be. But they decided that, oh, there is someone who's going to be feuding for a while with Hangman Page, and it's going to be Samoa Joe. So they had Samoa Joe and the Ops all beat the shit out of Hangman Page, which was, I thought, was surprising, in the sense that I wasn't like entirely shocked when Joe took out Hangman with a clothesline after the post match, but then just immediately Hobbs and Shibata start beating the crap out of him as well. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, that's interesting. So I thought one or two things might have happened if they were going to go with that heel role, which was either Joe does it and they get a little bit annoyed about it, like, what the hell are you doing? And Joe, and that's how you fracture the team. They lose the titles to the Hurt Syndicate, and then Joe goes his separate ways to the other two. You build it from there. Or I thought Hobbs would be the guy to just take out Page and, have the same effect with just Hobbs as the one turning heel and elevating him to the next level. But they decided, no, all three guys, they're a unit, and they all collectively wanted to beat the shit out of Hangman Page for winning the title. They take him out, beat the shit out of him. Joe drops him with a muscle buster on the title, and we're gonna see this continue at least into Full Gear. And I think that this could definitely carry forward into at least World's End, because I think you do Joe, and I think you do Hobbs as a title contender as well. But
And I definitely didn't expect Shibata to ever be heel.
no,
Like,
no,
it
Kenta was
works
right.
for me, don't get me wrong, but like, I didn't expect that they would go that route with him.
Yeah, Kenta was right all along that Shibata is just a
Yeah,
prick
maybe.
waiting to come out.
Well, there you go. I guess I like that we're gonna get to see that side of Shibata too, because there are some people who are just meant to be badasses, and I think all three of those men do kind of fit that mold of, like, they're going to be able to do more as a heel. They won't be exactly Death Riders, but it'll have that same, like, we're just no nonsense, we're just gonna beat your ass. It'll be less sadistic, but I'm excited to see what they do.
I think this was important as well, because not saying there's like a dearth of top main event heel guys in AEW, but it's a case of, well, all the ones that are top heels are kind of tied up with things. So Okada's not going to be fighting for the world title when he's tied up with the uh, Unified Championship and with Takeshita and all of that stuff. Fletcher's already had his shot. MJF is away right now, and he's already been doing stuff with the title as well, so you don't want to just go straight back to that. You can't go back to Moxley. Or potentially other members of Death Riders right now, because that's still lingering about what's happening with that. So there's only so many people that would be top heels for Hangman to take on. So I think it was the right move to make the Ops a heel unit and have them be the next antagonists for Page to take out. It's three guys he can work on, obviously, at different levels of I guess reputation or of main event caliber. So obviously Shibata's not going to be winning the world title anytime soon, but both Hobbs and Joe definitely have potential to be top world champions. Well, Joe has already been there, but Hobbs at some point definitely could be a world champion. So yeah, I think this was a good direction for them to take in the interim until then this will be Hangman's next kind of quarterly feud before he moves on to something else after this. I don't think this will end with him losing the title, but it's a nice transition for those guys now that they're done with the Death Rider stuff, and now they can focus on being the badasses that they portray themselves to be.
And I'm looking forward to seeing them actually do it. I think this means they can drop the trios titles. If not, they've got a ready-made feud with Eddie Kingston, Hook, and a third might not be too hard to find for them. There's a lot of places you could go here.
Yeah, I think they will drop the title. I think that it definitely gives an opening for Page to come out during the match to cost them the title, and then you have to hurt Syndicate win, and then it's just the Ops and Hangman, and maybe Hangman can recruit some other people to help him out in his cause. But yeah, I thought this was a good semi-main event, and I'm looking forward to rematches that will come down the road between them as well. I assume that it'll be Hangman and Samoa Joe at Full Gear as well. So, but let's talk about the main event of this show, which was Darby Allin defeating Jon Moxley in their I Quit match. So before we get to the ending, because the ending is obviously the big talking point on this one, and how abrupt or anticlimactic it may have been, I think we should talk about the bulk of the match itself, which was, I think, not as quote-unquote spectacular as maybe some people were expecting, but I kind of appreciate the fact that it was like a torture video. Not to say, like, not into that kind of, that's not exposing my fetishes right now, but like, it's more of a case, it was methodical. It was slow.
Not, look, folks, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
This is the kind of match where I don't know if I loved it or hated it. I definitely hated the finish, but we'll get there. It was borderlining exactly what Moxley and the Death Riders needed to do, and borderlining, okay, this is too wrestling is cinema. And I think it was getting dangerously close to that where at one point Darby is genuinely being waterboarded, and it was a very interesting match. I thought it started out strong. I thought Darby bleeding seconds into the match was exactly where we wanted to go. And maybe this is a fault of my own, and not trying to expose my own fetishes, but where was the blood? I expected a murder. And I got a almost comic book movie victory for the hero. I expected Mox and Darby to be bleeding buckets. I expected the Death Riders to be, taken out completely. There was a moment with the taser, but even the taser was just like a moment where, like, Mox got it, tased Darby in the nuts for 2 seconds, and then swapped that out for a chair where he hit him with the Death Rider on the chair. And Darby was doing great. He was no care for his body, getting ragdolled, doing the whole thing. Claudio did the fucking awesome move where he runs across the ring and gorilla press throws Darby and onto the announce table like he's some cartoon. And then the waterboarding happens, and lights go out. And I will. But let me backtrack here, and I know I'm a little rambly. Let me backtrack here. Darby's getting waterboarded, and I'm going, I know Hangman got attacked. I know, yeah, people got attacked, but, like, are there no baby faces in that locker room that, like, want to try to save this poor man? And he's being tortured. And the referee's not, like, showing no urgency. He's not even showing, like, a frustrated, like, there's nothing I can do. He's just like, do you quit? Sir, you're being waterboarded. Do you quit? And I needed a little bit of realism to enter the picture. But damn it, what we got was a little better than realism because the lights went out. And we got Darby's only friend in the wrestling world. Old man Sting, full beard, full gray hair, comes out and just beats the shit out of Moxley with a bat. Smashes the aquarium that they were using to waterboard him. And hands Darby the bat and then just walks away. Like, Sting, by the way, face paint's great because it makes him look like he hasn't aged a bit. Like, Sting looked great, but then we get to the problem of the matter, which is Darby hits Mox with the baseball bat a couple times. Does the Scorpion death drop with the AEW flag wrapped around Mox. Locks in a pretty poor Scorpion deathlock, and Moxley just gives up. And for me, I'm like, yo, this fucking guy tried to kill you. And you've done worse things to him on television. What happened here? Because it was just like, it was literally Scorpion, and then you don't even really hear Mox say I quit. It felt very anticlimactic for a match that was being built up like two men were going to absolutely try to murder each other.
Yeah, so we'll dive into it because that was a big exposition into all of it, which is like totally fair. That was a good encapsulation of everything that took place. What I liked about the match is the fact that it was like more cerebral than other matches they've had, and whereas like take the equivalent of say Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland Texas Death Match, where that was just like loads of crazy, ridiculous things with cinder blocks and barbed wire, drinking each other's blood, all of that shit. I think that obviously that was great, and that is absolutely what I want to see as well. But this one they took on a bit more of a, Moxley doing the whole like big monster heel role in this scenario, and he's just toying with Darby, throwing him around like he's a rag doll. They do him bleeding from the mouth early on, which was obviously a blood capsule. I don't think anyone's like pretending that was the case, but like it was pretty obvious it was a blood capsule. And so he's bleeding from the mouth throughout it. They do a spot earlier on where it's like Darby chokes him over the top rope with the flag, which is good because it harks back to the way that he was dangling there with the Hangman Page match earlier in the year. But he gets out of it with that one. But then there's the moment which I knew was going to happen, which is the moment which would make me wince and not watch the TV, which was the skewer through the fingernail, which was
Yeah, that was nice. That was the
yeah.
kind of torture I was looking forward to. We're weird people on this
Yeah,
podcast.
but I was like, oh yeah, like oh, I can't watch, but this is awesome. That kind of that kind of feeling. So I knew that was going to happen at some point, and so they found a way to do that, which is great. I think that yeah, and then the real awesome spot of the entire match, which was Claudio really yeeting Darby Allin out of the ring. Like that was the precision of that throw in such circumstances was absolutely astounding, and he just bounced off the announce table like a sack of shit and just falls onto the other side. Get the aquarium out, start waterboarding them. The one issue I had with the waterboarding, which again maybe just points to like a bit of a sadism in the back of my head, that he wasn't holding his head under the water long enough for me to think that he was actually drowning. Which is maybe like really bad for me to say. It's like, oh, I can hold my breath for like 15 seconds. That's fine. It's like yeah. So that was maybe
But you
me
wanted to see
overthinking.
Darby actually drowning. I understand.
Yeah, and then you get Sting involved, and that was cool to see old man Sting with with his grey features help out Darby, let Darby finish this on his own, carry Marina out of the arena so he can finish this off. And yeah, it was obvious that they got constrained in terms of time. There's two big things. One is that there was a spot earlier in the match where Darby just covers Moxley in lighter fluid. And so you just assume that fire is going to be involved in some form or fashion at the end of it. Especially with I don't know if you saw this earlier on in the show because it was on the 0 hour rather than the tailgate brawl, but they had Renee Paquette talking very passionately about how scared she is about this match and all the things that have gone on between John and Darby Allin because obviously of her relationship with John and stuff. So that I thought, okay, they're going to do something really scary in this, and they did do scary stuff in it. But it was a case of the ending was you had the broken aquarium, the water all over the place, and Darby hits a coffin drop, he hits the Scorpion Death Drop, and then he ties him in the Scorpion leg lock, and Moxley just essentially taps out. He just says, I quit while in the leg lock, but that's essentially what it was. And I just thought, yeah, that is kind of anticlimactic that all the stuff they've done to each other, all the things that they threatened to do, like he set Moxley on fire in a body bag, like he took Darby Allin out like for months and months, or in kayfabe at the very least, by chucking him down the stairs, like, and then it just ends with Darby Allin using his mentor's move to force him to essentially tap out in the middle of the ring, while he's surrounded by like a broken aquarium of water. I would have thought at the very least, like I thought what I presumed was happening is they smashed up the aquarium and then he was going to use the glass to like put it up in the into the eye of, or go towards the eye of Moxley, or to the mouth or the throat of Moxley or something like that, and then Moxley would just say, "Oh fuck, I've got to quit because this guy is actually going to maim me." But or that he was going to be crawling around in the Scorpion and he was crawling over the glass of the aquarium,
And
and then
listen,
it's
it was
like,
a big puddle. Maybe that was meant to be the intent.
yeah. But it's a case of like, it seems like, and I don't know if it's been confirmed, but like it does seem like the time was an issue because it was right, like this was right at like the 4.5 hour mark of the main show. They probably had to clear out the arena beforehand. There was probably timing issues beforehand, which meant that they had to curtail this, and so he just had to tap out straight away because it pretty much like fed to black. There wasn't even like a big celebration or anything like that. It pretty much, we were done a minute after the finish happened. So clearly it was rushed, and that is an anticlimactic finish. The worst thing about it, from my perspective, because I still think the match overall was very good. It wasn't like the absolute bloodbath horror show that I was expecting it to be, but I had enough of those moments to be, okay, this is still great. But I think that the finish was lackluster, and that the big issue is that it didn't write Moxley off, and it didn't write the Death Riders off.
Because I think that's on. I think on Wednesday, they're all gonna murder him.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. Is that he's demonstrated he quit under those circumstances. He quit, and so the whole mantra of the Death Riders has been like, we're the strongest, we're the best, like we are what professional wrestlers should be. And so he's quit. He's quit on them in a way, and so they have to take him out in the same way they took out Danielson because he was too weak and all of that other stuff. So
I
that
think Wheeler's gonna plastic bag him.
Hmm.
I think you could get, you get Claudio like uppercutting him into oblivion. Yeah, I don't know how far we can go here, but you can get Claudio swinging him around with a plastic bag. Honestly, that might be a little sick. Just
Yeah,
absolutely take this guy out
swing
completely,
him
and then
by the plastic bag.
I think it would be a very interesting thing if he had to take that with the plastic bag on his head. And then eventually you get him to come back, and he'll come back with a wild thing and be a baby face, and yay, Mox is back.
I say I thought it was good. I think that we're probably in agreement, and like the finish was anticlimactic and just wasn't in the same tone as the rest of the match and the rest of the feud has been. Make it so kind of like lackluster, or so just a wrestling hold being the reason why he gave up. But the result at the end was Darby Allin gets the victory. He wins the feud overall, which is what should have happened. And yeah, we'll move on and see what happens next on Wednesday. I think we'll have a lot more clarity in the direction of the Death Riders and who's going to be in it. Is Moxley being taken out? I will say, just as a thing for this match particular, just as a means of capsulating it, especially if what happens on Wednesday, we've said happens on Wednesday, and that's the end of Mox for a little while. I think he's been so good the second half of this year, like ever since like April May time. I think that he's been, because I know there was so much issue with Death Riders early on, and there's no escaping that side of things. But I think as soon as they got through like the Swerve match and then was honing in on the Hangman feud, I think that Mox took it up to another level in terms of the way that his matches were, and he felt like the end boss that I think he was always designed to be with this feud or with this storyline. That it never really worked for the first like 3-4 months of it, but I think by the end of it, he was right where he needed to be, and I think he's carried that forward with the feud with Darby as well. So I just want to give a lot of credit for Mox this year because I think he's done a lot better than people were fearing at the start of this year, and he's really turned it around.
I agree. I think he's he's become the main character. I know people say Hanger's the main character of AEW, but like Hanger's the main protagonist. Mox is the beating heart of the show. Like Mox is the guy that makes it all happen. And I think that's evident by the fact that people aren't even, and there's layers to this, but people aren't really afraid if they lose Jericho. But I think they'd be petrified to hear that John Moxley wanted to go back to WWE.
Yeah, and I very highly doubt that will ever be the case. But
I don't think that would ever happen, but
you never know. You never say never with professional wrestling. So, but yeah, but that's our review of Wrestle Dream, which I thought, overall, I'd say a good 7 out of 10 show. I think most of the matches were good to great. I think there were some that were a bit underwhelming or a bit, teasing certain people or teasing surprises that didn't arrive. But especially with the tag team matches, for the most part on this show, I think that really elevated it. I think a lot of the women's matches stood out and they stepped up in terms of the standing and reputation wise. And the main event, albeit with the flat ending, gave me the kind of scratch the itch of sadistic violence that I was looking for.
Yeah, I would say it only scratched the surface of the sadistic violence I was looking for, and I wanted more blood. And I can sort that out mentally at another time. But I was looking forward to more blood.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get more blood in Full Gear in some capacity.
Well,
but
we will get more blood and blood and guts. There will
oh
be
yeah,
blood.
definitely. There will be blood and there will be guts. Maybe less so guts, but definitely the blood.
You never
But
know, but somebody could get injured seriously.
yeah, but that was yeah. But we'll look forward to that, and we'll look forward to all the DC themed costumes and characters that we'll see on that show as well. But yeah, we'll draw a line under this now. So thank you very much for listening to our kind of slightly delayed review, but it's allowed us time to just settle in and get clarity to our thoughts on what the event was. So if you've enjoyed our little recap, or you have your own thoughts on what took place at Wrestle Dream, if you really enjoyed it more than we did, or you hated it, just drop any of your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what you're saying and what your thoughts were on the entire show. And if you'd like to support us in any way possible, of course, there's the easiest way to do that is by hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting, doing anything you can to help raise our profile in the algorithms. But of course, there are ways you can support us monetarily as well, which of course involve the Patreon or the YouTube membership. So signing up for one of the tiers there help us out with some little monthly insurance to give us a little bit more motivation and just to support us keep the lights on around here. More one-off payments come from Redbubble and TeePublic if you want to pick up some Smark Moment merchandise ahead of the holidays. It's all available there for you to peruse and see what takes your fancy. Join Discord, follow everything under a mango tree, Fanboys Anonymous and all that great stuff, all the other stuff that Tony does as well. And you can follow Rob where you can follow Rob.
Yep, you can follow me over at Dude Felice, and you can check out Fightful.com, but more importantly, check out Smark and everything under Mango Tree, because that's where you can always find me and Callum.
Yep, and you can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky Wigmeister14. Check out the Power Rankings every single Saturday over on smarkamoment.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And head on over to the Fantasy League, where there's been a bit of a change with Seth Rollins' recent injury and Jacob Fatu's recent injury. I've had to swap out Jacob Fatu, and I brought in Ilya Dragunov,
United States
new
champion,
United champion. Yeah, and Tony has dropped Seth Rollins. He's moved Dominic Mysterio into one of his protected spots. He's brought in the NXT Women's Champion, JC Jane, to replace him. So, yeah, big changes due to recent injuries. So just keep an eye on all of the latest updates, all the latest rosters over at WWEFantasyLeague.com. And as I said earlier, just follow Tony on and show him some love and support on his works while he's hopefully sunning himself a little bit over in Brazil. And he'll be back this week. He'll be back for probably at least by whether it's a main event on Wednesday or whether it's the hot tags on Friday.
Definitely be back for the hot tags.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, Tony will be back next week in some capacity. We might have one more show where it's just us two, or he'll be back straight away. I'm sure he was itching to get back into doing some talking on this platform, sharing maybe his thoughts about Wrestle Dream and all the other stuff that he's missed out in the meantime. But yeah, just keep following along, and we'll be back to full strength very soon. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed Wrestle Dream as much as you possibly can, and we hope you enjoyed this as well. So, thank you very much. This has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.